Since early biblical times, Egypt has been the location of some of history's great visions and miracles. It was here where Moses parted the waters of the Red Sea, and here that Joseph correctly predicted a famine by interpreting the Pharaoh's dream. For hundreds of years, these mystical experiences were recorded verbally, passed on through generations by this religion's rich oral tradition. In recent decades, technology has created the possibility to capture these events visually for all to see. Digital cameras, video and cell phone cameras have allowed the creation of a visual tradition. Now, many of these miraculous events can be seen as well as talked about. In this film, we will explore some of the most mystifying footage of miracles and visions ever taken, and explore their meaning with those who have seen them. It was 1924, and Khalil Abraham was about to build a hotel in the spot in Zaytun, where the Holy Family was said to have visited more than 1900 years earlier. One night, as he slept, Abraham was visited in a dream by the Virgin Mary. "Build a church in my name," the Virgin demanded, "and a miracle will take place in the future." He did just that. Then, on April 2nd, 1968, the miracle took place. Two Muslim parking garage agents on Taman Bay Street in the Cairo suburb of Zaytun saw a woman perched perilously on the dome of the Church of St. Mary. Thinking she was a young woman trying to kill herself, they shouted for her to come down. Then they realized that this was no ordinary woman. Soon, word spread that the Virgin Mary had returned to the Church of Zaytun, built in an area that Mary had promised to return to after stopping at this spot to rest during the Holy Family's flight to Egypt. Bishop Marcos was among the thousands who saw the apparition of the Virgin Mary. At the time, a member of the Faculty of Engineering at Cairo University, Bishop Marcos describes what he saw in 1968.
Just behind the church, in front of the wall of the church, I think, not more than 40 or 50 meters, approximately at midnight. I have seen the vision, complete, very nice, very clear. I saw the complete face, complete body, and her hands waving to bless the people. And everyone could see that she concentrated her eyes on them exactly.
Soon, thousands of Christians and Muslims alike flocked to the tiny church, including President Nasser, who was stunned by the vision. The apparition changed the politics of Egypt as Nasser developed better relation with Egyptian Christians. And of course, all who saw the apparition were overwhelmed. One who witnessed the apparition was Dr. Otto Meinardus, a member of the German Theological Association and a Harvard-trained theologian who taught at the prestigious American University in Cairo. He marveled at what he saw in the early days of the apparition, bringing many students to witness what he called the most stunning sight he had ever seen.
Well, it occurred during the first days of April that thousands and 10,000s of people, both Muslims and Christians alike, assembled in front of the Church of the Holy Virgin to see the apparition of the Virgin Mary as she appeared there on the dome. The days later, large numbers of people, both Muslims and Christians of the various denominations, assembled there and witnessed the apparition in various forms. I myself saw it numerous times with friends in my parish, with university students, and yes, there's to be no doubt about it.
Dr. Carey Malik was among those who couldn't get enough of the holy apparition. He was among the first to see Her Holiness and returned several times.
I was standing over there near the fence and holding that iron fence as strong as I could because of the pressure of the crowd. And it was about 8:30 in the evening, and I saw a light coming out from the this dome, which is the southwest dome, and the light began to increase gradually, and then suddenly the Holy Mother was standing in front of the dome. She stood there for about 15 minutes, and then she began to walk, and she stood in front of that cross, and she knelt and stood up again, and then she walked to the northern side of the church, just above the area where I was standing, and she looked at the crowd, and she blessed them, and she smiled, and I can say that I saw her teeth when she smiled. I was preparing in my mind about 7 or 8 requests from her when I saw her. One of them was to cure me from asthma, which I had for about 20 years. When I saw the Holy Mother, I found myself trembling and tears coming down my cheek. And I stood there about half an hour, and I went back to call my family, who was in the other street. And when I came back, I could not reach the church because of the pressure of the crowd. Till about 11 p.m., I could manage to reach near the fence, but I was not holding anything at that time. And I saw a Muslim clergyman, and he gave me his name as Mujahid, and he told me, "You are trying to look, you don't see well, I will carry you." And he carried me, and when he did that, I saw the most fantastic view I ever saw in my life. I saw the Holy Mother standing. She was about double the size of the human being. She was just, I believe, in front of that dome. And she was dressed in blue and a red robe above the dress, and there was a crown of about 20 centimeters high on her head. The second time I saw her after that, it was a week later. I came a week later, it was Saturday also, and she was, I saw just half view. She was standing behind the dome, and then I saw people pointing at the moon, and I looked at the moon. I saw her face stamped on the whole face of the moon. And that was the last time I saw her in the tomb before I left for the United States.
The appearance of the Virgin Mary brought with it many reports of miracles, some of which were witnessed by Bishop Marcos.
We had a man who was very crippled. His hands were paralyzed and his back was bent, and he could barely speak. At approximately 7 o'clock in the evening, I saw him begin to move his hands and then his fingers, and then the rest of his body. Before long, he threw his canes from his hands and began to run around the church, blessing God, because now he was healed.
Another story of healing is told by witness and author Pearl Zaki.
One girl named Teresa Galila had polio when she was about 6 months old. She could drag her legs with crutches, and she was healed at Zaytun. And I had seen her walking.
There were other miracles seen as well. The late Bishop Gregorios, during a private interview, told of doves the size of angels that would appear and disappear over the church.
Before they disappeared, they dispersed like cotton.
Bishop Gregorios saw many doves at many different times over the church.
Sometimes there were 7, sometimes there were 12, and they were in a formation.
Bishop Gregorios also witnessed several healings at Zaytun, including one Muslim woman who was spectacularly healed after paralysis after visiting the church during the apparition. She visited the bishop to show him how the miracle had affected her life.
With a stick in her hand, she said, "I am bringing this stick with me, not because I need it any more, but to convince you that I was paralyzed, and I was depending on this stick, and now I don't need it."
Even though the Zaytun apparitions took place 4 decades ago, it is nearly impossible to find anyone in Cairo who didn't see the Virgin Mary themselves, or who knows someone who did. Zaytun is history's most observed apparition of the Holy Mother. It was a long-running holy event that changed the course of Egyptian history. What was the importance of the appearance of Mary? Bishop Gregorios addresses the question.
Saint Mary is preparing the people for the second coming. But before the second coming, there is the crisis and the Antichrist, who creates other problems.
Bishop Marcos has a different, less apocalyptic view of what the appearance of St. Mary at Zaytun means to mankind.
The vision of Saint Mary is intended for all Egyptians, not just the Christians. She gives them peace. She gives them hope, and the belief that tomorrow will be better than today.
On May 4th, 1968, His Holiness Pope Creolus VI announced the findings of a committee of bishops to 150 members of the press. The visions of Zaytun since April 2nd, 1968 are true, declared the bishops. The Holy Virgin Mary is appearing in her church in Zaytun. His Holiness the current Pope Shenouda III says that the apparition at Zaytun is like no other in history. For example, hundreds of thousands of people have been able to see the Virgin. Plus, the apparition lasted almost 3 years, allowing people to come from all over the world to see this marvel. And Zaytun was accompanied by many miracles, including medical healings, and the presence of pigeon-like objects that flew at night and seemed at times to ascend into the heavens. These and other findings have led author Francis Johnson in his book, When Millions Saw Mary, to call the apparition of Zaytun the most astonishing public manifestations of the supernatural ever to have occurred on earth. The Church of St. Damiana in the Cairo suburb of Shubra is the religious focal point for Egyptian Christians in that part of town. Despite the hardships faced in their daily lives, the Christians of Shubra find reward in the rich ritual of their religion. But at times, events in this crowded church have gone beyond ordinary worship and into the mystical realm of Christianity. There have been times when the members of this congregation have reported apparitions of light, both inside and outside of the small but important church. Rarely are these highly visual events recorded, but on a particularly active night in 1986, American doctor Kerry Malik was at the church with his video camera and managed to capture some amazing footage.
I was in the church and I saw strong lights in the dome.
Suddenly, said Malik, light began to appear on an icon of Christ. Then, a few moments later, came a flash of light in the dome that illuminated Jesus. The crowd erupted in joy. This bright and quick light in the dome appeared many more times that day at St. Damiana. Flashes of light, apparitions and icons. Why did these small miracles take place in this tiny church in Shubra? The man who took the home video footage, Dr. Malik, has his own theory.
There were few people praying in this church before the apparition, and because this is a very poor area with few Christians around, and then the church after the apparition became full of people.
In 1986, a papal committee confirmed the visions. The committee said the visions occurred night and day and were so powerful that they healed a number of witnesses.
And there was a big change in their faith and in their lives.
The Bible tells us that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph went to Egypt to escape the wrath of King Herod. The Bible and records of the Coptic Church say that the Holy Family fled up the Nile for hundreds of miles until an angel appeared to Joseph and told him that King Herod was dead. Copts believe the angel appeared near the Nile city of Asut and have marked the spot with the Church of St. Mark. Coptic Church records say it was from here that the Holy Family began its return to Israel. Lights have been reported over this spot for years, but the most awe-inspiring of these times came in the year 2000, when flashing lights from the heavens attracted the attentions of tens of thousands of people, first from the city of Asut, and then from all over Egypt. At first, church fathers could not believe what was taking place. That was when Fathers Zaka and Appa Noob came into play. They were among the first to witness the apparitions of light and knew that hundreds of others had witnessed them too. Rather than rely completely upon faith, these two intrepid priests decided to scientifically study the apparitions, finding eyewitnesses and collecting their stories.
We divided people into two groups, and we sat with them and we wrote down everyone's information. We collected more than 50 eyewitnesses to the apparition, including their name and what they saw.
As they carefully recorded and collected eyewitness accounts, the flashing lights continued and the number of eyewitnesses grew. Now there were thousands more witnesses and a number of medical healings being reported as well. The priest took these in stride and collected the stories of healings, demanding medical backup to prove that a healing had actually taken place.
We have many healings that have been certified by medical doctors, from colon cancer to many other diseases.
Another story of healing came from a Muslim man who was miraculously cured of colon cancer during one of the apparitions of light.
He is Muslim. He had colon cancer. Next to this church is a hospital for cancer patients. One of the patients, a Muslim, climbed onto the roof of the hospital and was bathed in the light of the apparition. When that happened, he went to his doctor and found that he was healed. His case was examined by several doctors and has been published in many newspapers.
In addition to the apparitions of light, several doves appeared. Witnesses say these doves appeared to be illuminated from inside and were reported to be very large and angelic in appearance. The apparitions occurred for several months and then they stopped. Thousands of people of all faiths saw them, and they asked the same question. Why did the apparitions of light appear in the year 2000, and why at Asut, which to this day is known worldwide as the hotbed of fanatical Islamic fundamentalism? Father Zaka offers his view.
Her presence during these apparitions tells the people to go back to their Father and go back to the thoughts of the heavenly light.
Although appearances of the heavenly lights have tapered off since they first became visible in 2000, they have not stopped altogether. The people of Asut still report seeing occasional flashes. Some of these have even been captured on film. The director of this program, Paul Perry, photographed one such apparition of light on a visit to Asut in the year 2000 while researching his book, Jesus in Egypt. The photograph he took clearly shows a spray of light coming down from the heavens directly over the steeple of St. Mark's Church. When the photo was shown to passers-by, few were surprised at what they call the lights of the Virgin Mary. The people of Asut are accustomed to seeing the lights of St. Mary, says Father Zaka. She gives us a message from heaven that Jesus and the Virgin Mary are always with us. Visions and miracles of the modern world take place in many forms and in many places. The ones you have already seen are the visions that have mesmerized thousands of people in Egypt. But in some cases, There are miracles that begin in Egypt and spread to other parts of the world, even the United States. Perhaps the most astonishing example of this is the miracle of Samia that started in Port Said, Egypt, and spread all the way to the United States. Bishop Tadros of Port Said, a witness to both the Samia miracle and the miracle of the oil, tells the story in vivid detail.
Till she became a member, active member in the church. Of course, with the evil life she was living, she practiced some things like smoking and drugs and whatever, which created some problems in her lungs and later in her breast. And she was suffering a lot of some clots in her lungs, like lots of blood, and a severe pain from her breast. And she went to the doctors, and they insisted that she should have a surgery. And then she said, I came now to the church, and you tell me about the miracles of saints and Virgin Mary performing miracles and many other saints performing miracles. Could they make a miracle to me? I don't want to have anyone touch my body. So she was a little anxious about having the saints make a miracle to her. And she was asking very, very deeply with tears in her eyes, Virgin Mary, try to do something for me. I don't want the doctors touch my body and cut my breast, whatever it's going to be needed. Because the symptoms were symptoms of tumors. Because from that severe pain she had and bleeding, she was, the doctors put a bandage tape around her breast, and they said, well, we have to make a surgery. At the night of the surgery, which was 19th February 1990, in the house of one of the priests here, was called Father Paula, Virgin Mary appeared to her in the middle of the night, and Virgin Mary, together with Saint Bishoy and Saint Abanub, made a miracle to her. I have part of the bandage tape. I can show it to you right now, and of course the other part within the church. Here, this is part of the bandage tape, which I took. Here's the blood. The crosses are still there. This was done by Virgin Mary to show that it was just like that when serving her breast. It was a long bandage tape, and the other part is in the church of Saint Bishoy. Of course, after that, the people began to suspect, how can a lady living an evil way of life, Virgin Mary, make a miracle to her? So God gave a special sign or special gift to this lady, that the oil comes out of her fingers. And this was for about 6 months until all the people believed that this is a woman who were evil, living an evil way of life before, but now she's repented and she was accepted. God has accepted her repentance and her confession to become clean again and to come to the church again.
The oil came from Samia's hands and fingers for 6 months before it stopped. In this video, Samia's hands are being wiped of oil in front of the church congregation during her confirmation as a nun. Here, she is slowly filling a glass with the mysterious substance to the amazement of the gathered clergy. Here, Samia's hand is guided by a priest as the astonished congregation watches oil seep from her hand to a glass. Finally, Pope Shenouda III assembled the tribunal of bishops and doctors and officially declared the events surrounding Samia to be a miracle. The events continue to this day, says Bishop Tadros.
The Virgin Mary reminds us with the miracle by having some of the oil comes out of the pictures of Virgin Mary. And even if I took the picture here with me, here in the bishopric house, and we put another picture in Saint Bishoy Church, the two pictures get oil out of them every year at the same time, the 3rd week of February. And thousands of people come and see the wonderful thing of the oil coming out It has no color, just like looking like a perfumed oil. Virgin Mary had given to us its natural oil like that. Doesn't have any color, just white, but its smell is very, very deep, and many miracles have been performed through this oil.
Bishop Tadros invited us to the bishopric, where he gladly showed us some of these oil-living icons. Signs of the oil on the icons was evident to both our eyes and in the stains at the bottom of the icons, and by feel. Oil was still clearly present at the icons. In this video, a group of priests are shown transferring oil collected in a plastic bag from one of the icons in Port Said to bottles for transfer to other Coptic churches around the world. He also showed us the report of the medical committee appointed by His Holiness Pope Shenouda III, proving that what happened to Samia on that night in 1990 was indeed a miracle. And of course, the newspaper articles dated February of 1990, which stand as the first mass media story of the event to be presented to the public. There were rumors in Port Said about an apparition of the Virgin Mary performing a miracle on a Christian lady. She had cancer of the breasts that was removed by the Virgin. We asked Bishop Tadros why God makes His presence known through oil.
It seems to me it's just like to remind us that the saints are with us and they are making miracles, and we are not alone. So it's reminding us with the miracle, with the original miracle happened in 1990, and also to encourage the people to have faith.
The Church of St. Bishoy in Port Said has received thousands of letters from those who have been healed by the oil from the Virgin Mary icons. This one is from a man whose blindness was cured by the oil from one of the icons. Others speak of healing from cancer, infertility, arthritis, and so on. These letters bear witness to the power of miracles, modern-day miracles in people's lives. And these miracles all represent the divine confirmation of the miracle that took place with Samia in 1990. But wait, the miracle of Samia doesn't stop here in Egypt. Rather, it goes on to the Western world. In May of 1990, Bishop Tadros visited Cleveland, Ohio, where he told a congregation of Copts the story of Samia.
Yes, I took the bandage tape, this bandage tape I showed to you right now, to the city of Cleveland just few months after this miracle. I think it was in April or May 1990. I don't know exactly the day. So I was talking to him about the saints, and we love the saints and their work with us. And I gave them an example that Virgin Mary had performed a miracle with us, with a lady in Port Said. And before the end of my speech, I said, well, the time of miracles is still existing. And it's not finished by this miracle even. It could continue. But it's up to the saints and up to God who will let the saints make miracles. And let us make a praising hymn to Virgin Mary. Once we started making the praising hymn to Virgin Mary, the oil came out of the two icons hooked to the altar. Virgin Mary and Jesus. And he didn't notice that. I was very busy with the hymns and the doxology, so I didn't pay attention. But the people were looking at something, I didn't know what it is. Until I finished the hymns, I said, Bishop, don't you see something coming out of the picture of Virgin Mary? I said, well, I didn't notice that. Let me see. So I found the oil coming of it. And all the people of the church were anointed. I took the oil and anointed the people as a blessing. And in no time, they called their friends and relatives with the cell phones. The church was full of people for weeks and weeks after that. And the media came and made a lot of reports. It was really something very remarkable.
The mysterious clear oily liquid is seeping from two icons on the walls of the Egyptian church, and some 15,000 people have flocked to receive the cure so far. WKYC's Tom Sweeney has the story.
The church building is 2 years old. The Coptic religion is 1,539 years old. It is the Catholicism of ancient Egypt. The icons are pictures painted in Egypt and brought here 11 years ago. The story of miraculous happenings begins on May 15th of this year. A light, oily substance began appearing on and dripping down the picture of the Blessed Mother.
Come from her neck all the way until her feet. someone noticed some oil come from the face of the Lord here. It was like a sweating, and started from the forehead and the eyes on the face, and when it is accumulated in certain area, start to dripping down.
There are 17 icon portraits, but no one can explain why these two are generating liquid. Father Mikhail says the spontaneous event is a miracle.
It is a spiritual sign that God used it to prove that He exists, He loved us, and He took care about us.
Today, people from all over Northeast Ohio came to visit the icons at St. Mark. Some were hoping the icons' miracle would rub off on them.
Visions are powerful in modern events, says Bishop Tadros, ones that are with us all the time.
This will strengthen your faith in preparing yourself for eternal life.
A healing miracle that has its roots in the United States took place to Isaac Ayub, a member of this Coptic Orthodox church in suburban Houston, Texas. Isaac's parents, Mom Nahab and Father Farwat, immigrated from Egypt in the 1980s. Nahab owns a restaurant, and Farwat is a veterinarian in the Houston area. All was normal for this Coptic Orthodox family until 1989, when medical tests at Texas Children's Hospital found that young Isaac had leukemia, lymphoblastic leukemia. Under the care of his primary care physician, Dr. Atif Wiskala, Isaac started chemotherapy. That was in 1989. 2 years later, Isaac developed a severe sore throat. Appearing that the leukemia had become worse, the doctor ordered more tests. Instead, he discovered that the leukemia was gone.
The biopsy was negative. The leukemia has completely subsided, and he was leukemia-free at the time.
What had happened? The Ayub family and a stream of friends who visited the house pointed to this, a picture of Jesus Christ hanging on Isaac's bedroom wall. It is a picture of Jesus seen in many households, but on November 11th, 1991, the portrait began to weep oil, great drops of clear oil that ran down the portrait and had to be captured in a container filled with cotton. But there was more to the story than just that, as Isaac and his mother tell us.
Isaac was sick, and I left him in bed. I went out of the room. He was laying down in my master bedroom, and suddenly he was screaming.
And I just happened to look at the picture, and the eyes, they just started moving. And then the hands of the Jesus, they moved up like that. And then they went back down really fast. And I was scared, so I ran out of the room.
After that, I went back to the room. I saw Jesus' eyes moving, and he started tearing a lot of liquid.
When word got out that the portrait was weeping oil, hundreds of people each day lined up to witness the event for themselves. Pope Shenouda III sent Bishop Tadros all the way from Egypt to examine the weeping miracle. He removed the picture from the wall and examined it. Then he wiped the picture dry with the cloth. Soon, the tears of oil reappeared. Local church officials pleaded with the Ayubs to hang the weeping picture in the Church of St. Mark, where the family goes to church. But they refused.
And I asked him to leave it for me because it's a gift from God. And I asked God to give me something instead.
Still, hundreds of people came to the Ayub home to see the weeping picture, and as they did, they brought their own religious portraits and objects for Mrs. Ayub to hang on the same wall. Before long, many of them, too, began to weep oil. Although the Ayubs did keep the original portrait of Jesus in their home, they donated a second portrait to the Church of St. Mark. It hung for a period of time next to the original, and, as you may have guessed, the new portrait began weeping oil within a short period of time. Miracles are a message from God to all of us, says Bishop Tadros.
And miracles is a tool in God's hand to reach the hearts of the people or the minds of the people who are a little bit stubborn and say, well, no, I don't believe, I need to have a proof and things like that. So when God works with them, they change and they believe and they come back to God.
The Boutros family of Borough Park, New York, returned from a journey to Egypt in 1986. On a wall in their home, they hung an icon of the Virgin Mary that they had purchased on a visit to the convent of Damiana. Then, a strange thing happened. 8 years later, in 1994, the icon began to drip oil. Word spread like wildfire, and soon the Boutros family home was filled with visitors. And then the press arrived.
It's a common occurrence in Egypt, but the Boutros family, who came here in 1979, never expected for it to happen here in Borough Park, Brooklyn.
An icon, a picture of the Virgin Mary, is supposedly weeping, and weeping not just tears, but oil.
This painting was purchased in Egypt back in 1986. For 8 years, it has been hanging quietly on this dining room wall until this weekend, when the family claims it began dripping some kind of holy oil. The tears and the cries are real. But how about the oil on this picture of the Virgin Mary?
I look behind the picture. There's no oil-producing substance there. As you can see from the glare, there is oil. It is an interesting oil because it is very thin. It's odorless. It is thin. It's not like olive oil or cooking oil.
Roshani Boutros, whose family brought the icon to their Brooklyn home from Egypt, said the phenomenon began Saturday night. Oil, golden, odorless oil, began seeping from the icon, he said. So much oil that they were able, he said, to collect almost 2 gallons in a jar.
I do believe it's a miracle. I do believe it's a miracle.
I believed it right away.
Even before seeing it?
Uh-huh.
And after seeing it?
It's no difference. It's no difference.
TV stations covered the event from virtually every angle, and so many people descended on the Boutros home that they soon moved the weeping icon to the Coptic Orthodox Church of St. George so they could get some peace. The TV coverage continued.
It's an icon of the Virgin Mary, which apparently is dripping oil. Today the icon was moved to a church in Dyker Heights, and that's where Channel 2 is live for you right now.
It was there that Bishop Marcos of Shubra was sent by Pope Shenouda to examine the miracle for himself, and to be examined himself by the press.
Do you believe this particular one, is authentic?
Yes, of course. It's really miracle.
Media coverage was intense. Finally, though, even cynical reporters seemed to believe in the icon that wept oil.
The icon has been seeping all day. There are large quantities of cotton collected in the bottom of a tray, and the faithful going by one, receives a swab of that cotton to carry home. And this cotton to swab on places which ache, which hurt, or to place on a mantelpiece and hope for a miracle in their lives. The faithful will believe, the skeptic will look askance. But then faith cannot be measured.
Now, the painting hangs in the Church of St. George, where Father Miniani has been able to take a closer look at her mysteries. He has many observations about the icon and her miracles, including why the icon was brought to the church to begin with. When the Boutros family could not deal with the crowds, they asked St. Mary if she wanted to be moved. Father Yanni tells the story.
We began to pray, asking St. Mary. We said, "St. Mary, if you want to stay here in our home, if you want to stay here, please give us a sign. If you want to stay here, stop dripping oil. If you want to go to the house of your Son, which is the church, give us a big amount of oil." She gave a big amount of oil. That is why they are sure that she wants to go to the church. I put some in a small jar. After a while I opened it and smelled it. It was like perfume. We sent some of it to the experts who analyzed the oil. They told us all the oil is 2 groups, the first from animal oil, or this kind from vegetable oil. But what kind it was they didn't know. The same scientist who did the analysis told us there was some kind of perfume that is very, very precious, but he didn't know what it was.
It all seems miraculous, doesn't it? An icon of the Virgin Mary that weeps oil for all to see and touch and smell. Perhaps it is, says Father Yanni, but he wants us all to know that grace is all around us. We need only accept it.
There are many miracles happening every day. We must accept the miracles as our faith in God. This shows that we believe in God, and God can do many things in our lives.
Normal events? There seems to be nothing normal about them at all. They are heavenly appearances at needed times, feelings that are given to people who seem unworthy, divine oil that heals illness and inspires faith, and apparitions that give heavenly body to belief. The next segment makes the world of miracles seem even, well, more miraculous. It deals with stories of transfiguration, miracles of eternity, transformation, and confirmation. A miracle is God revealing Himself by changing the laws of nature. We have seen many such cases so far. Now, you are about to see some of the most intriguing. On March 12, 1976, Deacon Saman Magala walked down to the River Nile from the Church of St. Mary at Maudi. Looking into the river, he saw a Bible floating towards him. Floating towards the very spot visited by the Holy Family nearly 2,000 years earlier. When he retrieved it, he found that it was open to Isaiah 19, the verse that reads, "Blessed be Egypt, my people." After being declared a miracle, the Bible was moved to a special room in the church, a room watched over by the priests of Matai, like Father Boutros, who tells us why the finding of the Bible was considered a miracle.
The Bible is very heavy, and in the River Nile it should have soaked up water and been immersed. But we found it floating, with no water inside it.
The message of the floating Bible is a simple one, says the priest.
God is with us always. He came to Egypt and blessed this place. So it is through these blessings that Christians still exist in Egypt.
In the distant town of Qanaa, in the far reaches of Upper Egypt, Bishop Makarios made a special request. He had not been feeling well as of late. Indeed, a year earlier he had nearly died of a heart attack. He had received a message from the Virgin Mary when he almost died. She told him he would not die until he consecrated the new church. His request was related to the Virgin Mary's revelation. He wanted to make a videotape made of the entire service because this was the day he was going to die. The local priest started the ceremony, and then after a while, Bishop Makarios took over. Continuing with the service, the bishop seemed to be chanting energetically, moved by the spirit of the ancient church service that he had performed hundreds of times before. Then something happened. More than an hour into the demanding service, Bishop Makarios fell dead at the altar. Here in slow motion is the death of Bishop Makarios, the one he predicted would happen. But the bishop's death wasn't the only thing miraculous on this day. Take a look again at the slow motion fall of the bishop. This footage clearly shows a tiny white hand pushing the sacrament bread back onto the altar so it won't drop to the ground. Bishop Cherubim is now the Bishop of Qanaa, replacing the late Bishop Makarios. He gladly discussed this incredible miracle that was captured on videotape.
About a year before his death, Bishop Makarios nearly died of a heart attack. As he was dying, the Virgin Mary appeared to him and kept him alive. She said he had to live another year to ordain this church, and that is what happened. As he was serving liturgy, he began to pass away, and as he was falling backwards, a small hand came up to put the body back on the altar. The hand appeared so that the body of Christ would not fall to the floor. and we see it clearly in the slow motion of the video. Several months before his death, Bishop Makarios had a coffin prepared. On the day of his death, a letter written by the bishop was found in the coffin, recounting what the Virgin Mary had told him, predicting the exact date he would die. And he did die on that date. Since his death, dozens of people have prayed at his grave, and 7 miracles from those prayers have been attributed to the Bishop of Qena, the man accompanied by angels as he died.
In the year 303, Roman Emperor Diocletian told Egyptian Christians to stop practicing their faith at the risk of beheading. When the Copts refused to renounce their faith, thousands were martyred by the murderous soldiers of Diocletian. By some estimates, as many as 15,000 Christians were murdered during these horrible years at the city of Akhmim alone. Now, the remains of the martyrs of Akhmim are at churches all over the world. But a large percentage of them are still here at the Monastery of the Martyrs in Akhmim, Egypt. It is here where the monks of Akhmim watch over hundreds of relics that have miraculously survived since those deadly years in the 4th century. And we do mean hundreds, and hundreds, and hundreds of mummified remains of those killed for their faith. And it is with these relics that a true miracle has been discovered. Despite being dead for more than 1,700 years, the martyrs still bleed.
Here is the head of a martyr. She was a young woman in her 20s. The governor prolonged her torture to dissuade her from the faith, and after going through many agonies, she was finally beheaded. The signs of torture are on her face, but her hair looks like that of a living person. Her hair was bound together when she was first discovered, but after combing it's become straight, as we can see. She is one of the many martyrs who endured tortures for the sake of Christ's name. There are other martyrs in this display case who were brutally tortured. One had his nose cut off as well as his ear. He still bleeds as a result of the agonies he suffered.
And yes, there are more martyrs. More than 8,000, says the monk, all with their own story.
هنتكلم دلوقتي عن الشهيد زكريا هو أصغر شهيد من اللي اكتشف.
In another room at the church, the monk proudly shows us the youngest martyr of Akhmim, a child named Zachariah. He tells us the boy's story.
This is Zachariah, the youngest martyr. He was discovered in the 1990s. His body is still intact. The governor ordered him and his father, a poor fisherman, to renounce Christianity, but God opened the eyes of this child. He could see crowns descending on the heads of the martyrs, and he chose to die.
There is probably no other church that honors martyrs as much as the Coptic Orthodox Church. The story behind the martyrs of Akhmim represent the reasons that these relics are so revered. Despite being murdered more than 1,700 years ago, they continue to bleed as a living symbol of perseverance and faith and symbolic and spiritual proof that we live after death. This program has documented some of the world's most spectacular miracles. From the apparition shown to all on the domes and steeples of some of Egypt's most blessed churches, to her miraculous icons that oozed blessed oil, to the martyrs that live in death to remind us of God's resurrecting power. Miracles are events that are contrary to the laws of nature, acts that are amazing, extraordinary, and unexpected. Unless, of course, you are a believer.